they're quite keen to sort of play it down as much as they can. They're saying that it's kind of a bump in the road, that it's a temporary intermission, and they are still hoping for his state visit to Italy to go ahead.
Now, the King has cancelled a series of engagements after he was taken to hospital suffering side effects from his ongoing cancer treatment. We can speak to Kate Mansey, who is assistant editor and royal editor of The Times. Morning, Kate.
Good morning.
So what do we know about these side effects that the King was suffering?
Well, yesterday morning, he was having his routine cancer treatment. And it was during that time that he suffered these, what the palace is describing as temporary side effects. They say as a precaution, he cancelled meetings that were due to take place yesterday afternoon with some ambassadors. And instead, he was taken by car to the London clinic, the hospital where he was treated last January. Now, he was there under observation for a short while. They say it was a brief visit before he returned home last night to Clarence House. I'm told he had dinner with the Queen back at Clarence House last night and was back in his study looking through his state papers, and it was sort of business as usual. He was back on the telephone, although it's obviously rattled them enough that they've now cancelled a series of engagements that were due to take place today in Birmingham, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah. And I mean, we perhaps shouldn't be surprised. Of course, you know, with Queen Elizabeth, she was a machine in her ability to work relentlessly. But, you know, the King is 76. He's an older man and he is having cancer treatment at the moment. It shouldn't be surprising that maybe he needs to take a break now and then.
That's right. I think no one can tell the King to take a break. You know, the Queen's complained about it before. You know, he's said to be on good form. Look, I was at Buckingham Palace a few nights ago where he had a reception and he left 20 minutes late because he was so busy kind of walking around. He was on his feet for a long time, shaking lots of hands. There was lots of laughter, lots of banter between him and the guests. And, you know, I think it's the work that kind of keeps him going to some extent. You know, the palace have had to put out a message because as head of state, they need to keep the public informed as to anything that goes on with his health. And had he been spotted at hospital and it had leaked out, it would have been catastrophic. I think, you know, the rumour mill would have started springing up. But they're quite keen to sort of play it down as much as they can. They're saying that it's kind of a bump in the road, that it's a temporary intermission. And they are still hoping for his state visit to Italy to go ahead. Now, this is the trip that's planned just over a week away. So I suppose it's trying to regroup now to make sure that he has that energy to do that state visit. I mean, it's also a reminder that, as you say, he's 76. You know, he started cancer treatment more than a year ago now, and that's still ongoing. And perhaps we forget about that sometimes, don't we? Because he's up and about doing so much.
We understand, of course, that we don't have all of the details on his cancer, and that's absolutely fair enough. You know, the royal family decided to share with us both him and Kate's cancer diagnosis. But do we have any sense of how long the treatment may go on, or a sense of, I mean, he has stepped back to a pretty full work schedule, but clearly that treatment is ongoing?
That's right. The palace have never seen fit to disclose what type of cancer the King has, nor have they ever said what type of treatment he's having. Now, you remember the Princess of Wales when she announced that cancer had been found following her surgery last year. She told us that she was embarking on a course of chemotherapy. We've never actually had that level of detail with the King. There are some things that they want to keep private, of course. But I think that's, it carries on. It's still ongoing most weeks. That's why he's back in London for that treatment. And he fits it around all his other kind of scheduled events.
Kate, thank you for speaking to us this morning and bringing us that update. That is Kate Mansey, assistant editor and royal editor of The Times. And you can read more on the King's condition and indeed the treatment that he's had and indeed the exhaustive schedule he is still managing to keep up with despite this pulled out of events today. But back at his desk last night, as Kate was telling us, taking calls. And this is described as a minor hiccup, a minor bump in the road.
Let's speak to Roya Nika, royal editor for the Sunday Times. Morning, Roya.
Morning, Callum.
Very good to speak to you. So first of all, he was receiving treatment and then experienced side effects. Just talk us through what we know.
Yeah, so the King, I think a lot of us kind of forget, or we don't, but the public might, that he's still having weekly cancer treatment every week at the London clinic. which he fits around his schedule. And he went in for his treatment yesterday. He tends to have his treatment around his engagements, and he's had a really busy week and experienced some side effects almost immediately afterwards. And so he was kept in the London clinic for a little bit for a period of observation, and then came home to Clarence House, we believe yesterday afternoon. And we got this statement from Buckingham Palace last night that possibly he was still feeling a little bit unwell because they cancelled his afternoon engagements. He was due to see some ambassadors, and they've cancelled his day trip to Birmingham today, which he's very disappointed about. But they did say he was back at his desk last night, typically Charles, working on his state papers and making calls.
Yes, which is remarkable. And I think the schedule point is a good one, Roy, because he's been busy over the last few months. A full schedule. He was in Northern Ireland last week. And what is notable with that in mind is, as you say, given he's getting weekly cancer treatment, this week does feel exceptional in terms of the side effects and having to then cancel engagements.
Yeah, it does. It's interesting. You look at his schedule and... on Wednesday, he went to Somerset House and toured an exhibition on soil. I mean, you might think that a 76-year-old who's having weekly cancer treatment might look at that in his diary and go, do you know what, I'll give that a miss. But that's just the opposite of Charles. He's absolutely determined to do as much as he can. And look, at the moment, we're hearing from Buckingham Palace that the state visit to Italy, which is the week after next, will still go ahead. They're saying they don't think there's going to be huge changes to his programme, but they'll keep an eye on his schedule and see how his recovery goes. No one will resist cutting down his diary more than the king.
It's the mindset of him and, of course, of his mother before him is remarkable. And of course, Roy, we don't know loads about his diagnosis or the specifics of his treatment or anything like that at this point. And that's fine. Privacy is privacy in these sorts of contexts. Is there any indication as to how long treatment will go on for? Because listeners will be aware that it's over a year since his diagnosis.
No, it's interesting. It's an interesting point. I mean, the late Queen was very unwell towards the end of her reign. We never had any specifics about her condition. We were just told she had episodic mobility issues. If you think about the King now, and, they told us he had cancer last year, they've given us some updates. It's more transparent than it was then. But the feeling is there has to be some sort of patient confidentiality between the patient, even if he's the King, and his doctors. So I don't expect we'll ever be told what kind of cancer he has or how long his treatment will go on for. But they are giving us these updates when they feel they need to, when his diary changes.
Yeah, and what of the rest of the royal family, who are a huge support, I suppose, at stepping into engagement, at carrying out their own engagements, of course. I noted that the Queen wasn't with him yesterday. She was carrying out her own duties.
She was at ITV with a clapperboard, meeting some of the stars of some of the ITV shows. No, and I think possibly that gives you a sign as to how there wasn't a huge amount of panic at Buckingham Palace. She didn't go with him. There'll be great relief, and everyone's very pleased. The Princess of Wales is now making her gradual phased return to public duties after being off last year, having her own cancer treatment. So the King's continues. Kate's making a phased, gradual return, and I think everyone will wish the King best, but I'm sure we'll see him out and about again very soon next week.
Roya, really good to speak to you. Thank you very much. Roya Nika is Royal Editor for the Sunday Times and host of The Royals with Roya and Kate, which you can download on your podcast app for all the insider info on the Royals, the royal family, and everything going on at the Palace.